Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Creighton.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Jody Lynn, you and I talk a lot with guests about relationships, primary relationships, personal relationships, and so forth. That's like a major theme. That we were just talking about some stuff before the show, but we don't talk a whole lot about business relationships. Why is that?
I think this is going to be a great conversation, and it's one that I think is often missed out on. Yeah. I'm excited.
Well, not just missed out on, avoided.
Yeah. Yeah. And like superficial a lot of times. So
good word.
I'm really excited to dive in.
Right. That's a really good word. I like that because a lot of the business relationships are superficial. And I have a sneaking suspicion our guest is going to show us not only how they're superficial, but how that ends up undermining the business relationships. Now, that's just a guess. I don't know for sure. But I'm going to kind of go out on a limb and say that's the case. So our guest is Morag Barrett, And Morag, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I am excited for the conversation.
Yeah, we're loving having you. And give people a little bit. First of all, let's get a little biography in here. Give people a little bit of background about how you ended up being an executive coach of all things. I mean, it's not like I'm going to grow up to be an executive coach. That's not normally the way the conversation goes when you're a kid.
No. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a long-distance truck driver because I thought I'd get to see the world.
Okay.
Now I've got to see the world. I've been to North Slope, Alaska, working with leaders there. So 2 weeks, best prime rib ever, and ice cream on tap 24/7. But it really was past north. It was dark all the time I was up there. And then Chile and Peru and around the world. So at last count, more than 15,000 leaders from 20 countries. But how did I get here? Well, I was going to be an engineer. I like puzzles. In fact, jigsaw puzzles, I would do them as a kid, do them with the picture up. And then when I'd done, turn them face down and do them again with the picture down.
Wow.
Are you one of those people who could do a puzzle, like an entire puzzle in like 10 minutes or something like that?
Oh, I go pretty fast. I get obsessed because you just get in the zone and it's like I can see it and manipulate it in my head. But I didn't end up being an engineer. I went into finance. I love math. There is an art and a science and a poetry with numbers because there is kind of a right answer. But what I realized in that 15-year career was that the cash flow forecast, the balance sheet, all of that only is half the equation, because if it was just about the logic and the numbers, then everybody who came to me and said, hey, we're going to be rich, we're going to start manufacturing little unicorn Chotskys, they would have reached their goals. And so how did I end up as an executive coach and now working with leaders and designing leadership programs around the world? It's because that's the missing part of the equation. It's not just what we do and how we organize, but it's also the who we are as individuals and how do we relate. And that's the human side, the relationship, the professional relationship piece that I am passionate about and that I get to dabble in every single day.
Jody Lynn, this is sounding a little familiar, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Because Jody Lynn's a money coach, so she deals with exactly the kind of things you're talking about, although she does it in a different level. But
yeah, I don't like math really all that much either. I like the creativity of building a plan, but I think we're on point of the connection, developing a relationship with people inside of business and outside of business. It's the game changer.
It is. I mean, you said it at the beginning. I mean, even the title of the show, Your Daily Dose of Happy, when we're not investing in our work relationships, they generally provide the daily dose of unhappy. Because think of it, you hang up from the Zoom call, you go home from the office, however you do your work nowadays, and you do what I call BMW, bitch, moan and whine. Either to the dog or your significant other, you say like, oh my God, you won't believe what Walt said today. You won't believe what Jody Lynn did today.
Yeah, they used to call that happy hour and it wasn't happy. Now they're just
No. Here's the thing. We're doing that complaining, that unhappy hour. with the people who can do nothing about it. They're just innocent bystanders. And so the work I do, the research I've done, the books I've written are all around how do you have that conversation at work in a way that strengthens the relationship versus causes further division? And ideally, how do you do it earlier before it becomes an issue? Because then that way we can have way more fun, more daily doses of happy, but also meet those business goals, the cash flow forecast, the projections that we're there to deliver.
Wow. Okay. I think we've set our task for ourselves today, right?
Yeah.
We're basically going to explain life, the universe, and everything where business relationships are concerned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm ready. So,
Me
all right,
too.
what's the solution, Morag?
So what do we do?
Well, what can we do? So my mantra is that success in business is about relationships. Success in life is about connection. It's all about the people, because it's a team sport. You can't, even as a solopreneur, when I started Sky Team 18 years ago, and it was just me, myself, and I, my success wasn't just dependent on me, myself, and I. It was dependent on the family who supported me. It was dependent on those first clients who either were taking a chance on me or had used and worked alongside me in my corporate career. It was dependent on those like you, the podcast hosts, the people who helped me to get my message out there. And I think sometimes we get so stuck on our hamster wheel and our own to-do list, we forget to take that into account. So what's the first step? Think about who are you dependent on for yourself, for your success.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can go for the, okay, if you've got that short list of people, what are you doing to deliberately and thoughtfully articulate what you need from them in order to achieve your success, but also be curious about what they need from you to help them to be successful?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, that's very good, because what you're basically saying is, I know where my keys to success are. I'm going to use them.
Yeah, but not in a Machiavellian way. This
No,
is
I didn't
in
mean it
the
that way. You're right. Yes, you could use it that way too.
Yeah, you can. And people unfortunately do, but that's when I'm invariably brought in as an executive coach, which is to help round out the edges, because it's not enough just to hit it out of the ballpark and deliver the business results if, as a consequence, it's a clean up on aisle 13 and there are relationships being damaged internally and externally. So the focusing on how we show up, the how we get there with the minimum of fallout, while still holding up high standards, that's the secret. And that's when the magic happens, when we can be better together. We can still be competitive, but instead of me trying to knock you down and win, i.e. you lose, can we both win together? Can we run towards that finish line? And can you give me the tough feedback I need to hear to help me raise my game? But then next week, if there's some advice that I have for you, you're willing to reciprocate and listen. And then you get to choose, are you going to act on it or not?
It's interesting to me that you mentioned the Machiavellian side, because it does exist. And honestly, I have really never thought about that side as being a side that actually is wanting to promote the business. I've always thought of it as the side that wants to promote the business owner. And to hell with the rest of the business. The only thing that matters is the business owner, which ultimately a self-destructive path. So I actually have a little trouble with the idea that the Machiavellian approach is actually a business approach.
Yeah, and I think it overlaps for me. I mean, the word toxic boss gets bandied around a lot, and it's not just bosses that can be difficult to work with. It can be our horizontal relationships. In fact, in our research, 67% of leaders who've completed our ally mindset profile say that their success has been undermined by the words and actions of a colleague, i.e. it is those horizontal relationships. But again, when we talk about the toughest relationships, most of us, me included, start with who are they? Who's been mean to me at playtime? Who isn't helping me to achieve my goals? Who's getting in the way of success? And what we forget to do is that sometimes I'm the difficult colleague. I'm close to being that toxic boss. But that's the second aha. There's two sides to the coin, but there are very few people who get up in the morning. I'm sure you don't, Jodie Lynn, you don't, I don't, hoping to be seen as the difficult colleague. So there is a misinterpretation of what I'm doing that's causing it. Either it's a misalignment of goals, maybe it's a different style and approach. I talk to think, you like to read the report and reflect before you talk to explore. And if we aren't clear about what is causing the rub, we will invariably write a story that is negative. We will start to reciprocate well, last time Walt interrupted me, so I'm going to interrupt him. I'm going to show him. And we've lost sight now of what's the business decision or the result we're trying to achieve together.
Yeah, for me, that's losing sight of what your own assets are in whatever your role is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like I'm a business owner, so as a business owner, my assets, the top of my list of assets is my employees, which is different from what most employers do. But nevertheless, I know that's where I want to throw my greatest amount of appreciation, because I've learned that's going to produce the best results. And I'm always a little befuddled when other business owners don't behave that way, even though most of them don't.
It is sad, because if you think about it, to your point, your people are your competitive edge. Because there are such low barriers to entry now in most industries. Others can replicate. So why not invest in your people? Because if they know that you care about them as human beings and not just as a cog in the wheel, then we're more willing to roll up our sleeves and go the extra mile to help us out on the tough days, to give us warning of impending disaster, to just talk about the business and you in a way that causes more clients, more customers, more success.
And most importantly, from my perspective, they make my job easier because I value them so highly. Yeah. I mean, that's the part that blows my mind. I mean, I have been there. I have been in that spot, like many business owners are. And the same thing could apply to high-level managers, medium-level managers, and so on and so forth. But I have been in that space where I didn't value the employees highly, and I ended up creating tons of work for myself and tons of stress for myself. As you can see from the hair, I mean, I earned every one of those white hairs. You know, that's just the way it works out. And then I finally learned, it's better to just hire good people, pay them well, treat them well, and watch them go to work while you just sit back and put your feet up. It makes life a whole lot easier.
But I mean, this is it's common sense, isn't it? But why is it then such an uncommon discipline? I mean, Jodie Lynn, why do you think it is then that some leaders, some team members don't see it this way?
I know from experience that I was a terrible boss at times, like the worst. And I was just thinking about that. Yeah, thank
kudos to you for knowing and acknowledging it. I know I've made mistakes too in my earlier career. I still make them. This isn't about perfection.
Exactly. So I think that I mean, at the time I didn't recognize it. I just thought I had some really shitty assistants. And then I was like, wow, been through 5 in like a couple of months, probably a me problem. And I think it came down to like reflecting back on it. One of the things that you've said today is that deliberate and thoughtful consideration of what you need and what others need. That wasn't there. I wasn't conscious of what I actually needed on the surface level. Like, you do my paperwork and I want you to do it so I don't have to. So I want it to be done right. And I have my own way of thinking through a problem, which is unique to me. And they don't think about it that way. So they didn't do it the way that I would do it. So it would cause that friction there. Not that it was wrong. It just wasn't the way that I would want to do it. And for me, the more frustrated I got, the more deeply I ingrained the belief that I don't need anybody else. I should just do this all by myself and I'll be better off. And I think a lot of people look at it that way. Like, I could do it better. So what am I paying somebody else to do it for? Or what's the value in them?
And I recognize those same symptoms.
What's that?
Sorry,
I said that's basically a measure of how much pain you're willing to put yourself through.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of pain. Yes. Yeah.
I remember going through that same growing pains as Sky Team grew from being just me, myself, and I, to when Eric and Ruby joined me and the team started to grow. Because to your point, Jodie Lynn, the Morag way and the Morag show was now the Morag Eric Ruby show. And it wasn't that they were doing it wrong, they were doing it differently. So I had to learn to let go of control. And we had to learn to talk about, well, what does success look like now for us? And then maybe I'm still the final decider and arbiter of what is top shelf, what is a yes and what is a no. But we do that together.
Yeah.
I actually had the experience through my marriage. I was married to a woman who started a gardening business, and I helped her build it up and so forth. But she was a hat wearer. She wore all the hats, as many as she could possibly wear. And it ended up putting her in the hospital. And it actually ended up leading, there were a number of different reasons, obviously, but it was one of the things that connected to why our relationship ended, why we ended up being divorced. All from wearing hats. Was that the only cause? No, but it was a significant contributor. You go through something like that, and you begin to realize wearing all the hats isn't what it's cracked up to be. It's actually pretty destructive.
Yeah.
And that's in the work that I do. As much as I focus on our professional work lives, leaders tell me that the concepts and the tactics that they learn in the office environment then start to spill over and make a difference and strengthening and deepening their personal relationships. And so if you think about it, that's why it's success in business is about relationships, success in life is about connection. And if we're doing the same ineffective habits at work and bringing them at home, they're not going to land well, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two kind of feed into each other.
Yeah.
When you encounter people that you're working with, though, I kind of imagine this is not their first insight. It takes a while to get there.
It can do. I mean, sometimes maybe a leader has just had some feedback, or often when they're bringing me in to work with them, they've been promoted to the next leadership level. And if you think about it, our whole school system, our early career is all focused on success through my own efforts. Can I graduate in the top X% of my class? Can I beat the exam board? Do I know enough stuff to be successful? And then we move into the world of work. Again, as I said earlier, a team sport, except we've been schooled in the art of the solo effort. So it's individual contributor. I'm focused on this week's results. You tell me what to do. I go do it. And what ends up happening in many organizations, I end up being a very good technical individual contributor. And as a result, somebody goes, oh, Morag, you're very good at making cups of coffee. We're going to promote you. You can now make coffee for the whole team. And what you don't tell me, though, is that it isn't about me making all the coffee. It's how do I make coffee for everybody using everybody's talents, which goes back to Jodie Lynn's point about delegating, letting go of control, coaching, feedback, so that I can start stepping up into the new leadership skills and new expectations. And that continues throughout our career. But if we don't make that pivot, if we don't start valuing success and results with others, then we're going to continue to do what your ex did, well, which is wear all the hats and try and do it ourselves. And that's when stress, burnout, and anxiety just go through the roof.
Yeah. Interesting side note. Going through that experience drove her away from gardening.
We start to lose the love and passion for the very thing that we wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
That's even more heartbreaking.
It is. Yeah. And she did eventually, after we broke up, I ended up buying the business from her. And she got away from it long enough that she could restore her love of gardening once again. But it took a lot. She paid a price. Let's put it that way. She paid a significant price in terms of what it was that she loved, and how it impacted her life was pretty rough.
It's interesting. I'm actually working on a new keynote right now, and the working title is "You don't need more meetings, you need more moments," and it's addressing the very real impact, emotional and health impact of loneliness and disconnection at work, whether you're solopreneurs or part of a 10,000 person organization. And how do we start rediscovering what I call meaningful connectivity? And that means connect with who I am and what I love to do and what brings me alive and fills me up versus drains me. But also then connecting to the work I do and reconnecting so that I can bring the equivalent of the day one enthusiasm that may have waned over the years, and then connecting with the people I'm doing it with, because we spend more time at work than we do elsewhere. So whether we're doing it through the camera and at a distance, or whether we're doing it in an office surrounded by people, how do we build that sense of connection to the work, to each other, and to ourselves?
Now, one of our favorite topics here is, we could kind of group it under the title, Go Within. And I'm willing to bet that going within plays a significant role in what you're talking about there.
So what does that mean for you? Tell me more.
For me, going within means connecting with who I am inside, who I really am, not the surface one, not the projection that I'm putting out to the rest of the world, but the real me. And then in the process of making that connection, finding peace in it, finding happiness in it, finding the original joy of who I am in it. And then once I have that perspective, then doing the interacting. So now I'm not looking to the external circumstances to provide my happiness, my success, my fill in life with whatever it is I'm looking for. I already have an inside. Now the outside can become a mirror of what's going on the inside, rather than something that I'm trying to create on the outside. As if, well, if I create on the outside, then I can be whatever that thing is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You have a similar perspective, but how do you look at that same thing?
I would mirror a lot of your words, really connecting. For me, it was connecting with myself to understand what that authentic version was or is. It's because I feel like it's always, there's change there, there's growth. What looking within is, it's a journey of 1,000,001 steps. So I agree with what you're saying. Well, going within, like connecting with yourself first and then connecting with others. My work environment for a really long time was very superficial. Very, very superficial, all about like it's finance. So it's all about sales and like big goals and like the fancy cars and the houses and the money and all of those things. But I got really caught up on that surface level of things and stopped connecting, especially with the team that I was building. They became, rather than assets, they became numbers, or like, for lack of a better term, like notches on the headboard. Sounds awful, but that's what they became, just another number of somebody coming in and like, are you going to do something? We work 100% on commission. No, you're not going to do anything. All right, see you later. Bye. There was no connection there. And like looking back, there was a lot of grief that I had of how I treated people, how I didn't connect with them, but I didn't really know how to connect with myself on that deeper level to allow myself to connect with the people I was working with, which is really bizarre because I've never had the problem when it came to client side of things in my business. I love that piece. That's what drives me in doing what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I want to know people. I want to connect with their hearts and where they're going. That's important to me. But for some reason, when it came to building a team, I was like, no, I don't have time for you. Maybe because I had connected, clients, you connect with them, and the more you serve, the more money you will make. I believe that it all comes back around. But I had this distorted perception of people in my business, even though I still made money off of them. It's a weird scenario.
Yeah. So what shifted for you?
I started to allow myself to spend time with people. I was so fixated on like the list of what to do to be successful. You got to make this many contacts. You got to, like go on this many appointments. And okay, I can check those boxes. I'm a workhorse. I can do that. But when it came to training my team, for example, it would get stuck in my head like, oh, an appointment would cancel. And this would ring in my head. You're either booking appointments or you're on appointments and nothing else matters. And so instead of taking that time to connect and develop that relationship, I would go and do those things. And I remember there was one day I was training this lady, Angela. She's actually a really good friend of mine. To this day, she still works with me. And our appointment rescheduled. And I remember like hyperventilating because I was like, I have to go and do something like that is productive. And my nervous system was completely out of whack. I wasn't looking within, like you were saying, Walt. I was just out of it in that regard. I need to go and do, or I'm not going to succeed. And I remember taking a breath, and she's like, why don't you just hang out? It's like 8:00 at night. Like, why don't you just hang out instead of going back to the office? Like, we live close to one another. Why don't you just stay for like a drink and whatever? And then we started to connect. Like we ended up following each other around. I followed her because she's a few years older than me, but like we went to the same high school. So I was right after her. And then we worked at the same hospital together and I was right after her, but we never actually met in those scenarios. We even went to the same university and I still never met her until the time that I had met her. So we had tons of stuff in common. And that was kind of the first step of developing a relationship. And then I finally let her in. And I could really see that what I was afraid of is that I give with my whole heart. So these clients, I could give them my whole heart and everything, connect with them so deeply and so personally. And if they weren't going to be my client, that was okay. It never felt like a loss. But spending all of that time building somebody and lifting them up and teaching them all of these skills, if they were to turn around and leave, that felt like a huge loss to me. And I wasn't ready to do that until I worked on that specific theme of it's okay. I'm not losing anything. I'm only, creating something bigger.
Yeah. I mean, that whole having and being a friend at work or a colleague, a trusted colleague. I mean, you don't have to use the word friend. It goes back to what Walt said earlier, is it starts with the inside work. Are you willing to make that investment beyond the transaction? Because when we just focus on the transaction, are you going to buy something today? No, then you're done. But what we're losing is that opportunity to nurture the relationship, because that purchase, that opportunity to lean in and collaborate from the customer, that might be 6 months down the line, if only we'd stayed in touch. And for our colleagues, we may be working on different teams today, but many industries are very small. And so you could find yourself walking into that conference hall, walking into that new job, that new company, and there is that person. And now you've got to roll up your sleeves and collaborate together. So better to invest in the relationship now for success today, but also those potential opportunities in the future.
Agreed.
I think there's another piece here too that you're starting to touch on, Morag, in the idea that in business, so often we think of our relationships as transactional. You're hinting at the idea that it has to be beyond transactional.
Yeah. So in our work, so Eric, Ruby, and I, we talk about 4 questions that we are all asking ourselves consciously or subconsciously every time we meet somebody new. You two are asking it about me and vice versa. The listeners and the viewers of the podcast are asking it. Question number 1 is table stakes. Can I count on you? Can I count on you to deliver your podcast and finish it on time so I can get on with everything else I need to do? It's the job description, table stakes. It's reactive. Question number 2 is, can I depend on you to go the extra mile? Can I depend on you to make it a fun podcast conversation with 1 or 2 nuggets that I can take away and apply to make it memorable?
Yeah. Sure.
And in my banking career, that's the transactional piece, and what Jody Lynn, you described earlier, where many relationships stop and start. The transformation comes when we get to questions 3 and 4. Do I care about you? I.e., do I know a little bit about your journey and your expertise beyond the name tag you may be wearing today? So for me, you can tell from the accent, I'm originally from England. I now live in Colorado. What you don't know till now is I'm the mother of 3 6-foot-tall sons. I'm a ballroom dancer and a classical musician, not at the same time.
That would be a trick.
That's when you start to get to know the human, beyond the task. Because if you just listen to me now and you think, well, she does executive coaching, she's written 2 books on professional relationships, she's a keynote speaker, yada, yada, yada. But you wouldn't have known about my finance degree, the fact that I do know numbers, I do understand what it takes to run a successful business. So question 1 is, can I count on you to do your stuff? Can I depend on you to go the extra mile, to spot errors in the spreadsheet, to give me warnings of impending disaster? Question 3 is, do I care about you? And question 4 is then, do I trust you? And trust is both given and earned. And it blows my mind when leaders say, well, yes, of course, you can prove that you're trustworthy. It's going to take you 2 years, but welcome to my team. And I'm thinking, there is not a company on this earth who can afford to wait 2 years for you and I to learn to trust each other.
Yeah.
We've got to start now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to be wearing the mask that you talked about, Walt. We're going to be hedging our bets. We're not going to be doing the innovation, the creativity, the informed risk-taking that's going to keep us at the pinnacle of success.
Right.
So count on you, depend on you. Do I care about you? Do I trust you? Those are the 4 critical questions that we need to get to 4 yeses as soon as we can. And you do that one conversation and one relationship at a time.
Do you consider those equivalent? I mean, for myself, I would actually put trust at the top of the list, but it sounds like you're kind of treating them equivalently.
So some people will enter those 4 questions at different points. So I naturally trust first, and I've got better at not just blind trust, but trust with guardrails, being able to articulate what does success look like at SkyTeam and how might that differ from the leadership firm you worked at before, and asking my clients, what does success look like for them and how does that differ from the other clients that we may be working with at this moment?
Yeah, for
and
me,
that's the difference.
I define the trust issue maybe a little bit differently, but it sounds somewhat similar. I define it in terms of, like you said, they're boundaries, they're guardrails, so to speak. But the guardrails are really, how far can I trust? And then what goes along with that is that far enough for the relationship?
Yeah, so how far can you trust me? But don't just hang me out to dry. Don't just set me going and throw me in the deep end. And then you're disappointed when I didn't deliver what you never actually asked for. So it's about making the implicit explicit. Really? So making the implicit explicit. And it's easy for me to coach leaders and in our leadership programs or my keynotes to talk about these. What I also need to do, and it comes back to the early part of our conversation, is hold up the mirror and thinking about where I am in my career, the work I'm doing. Am I living up to those expectations? And where am I getting not lazy, but taking shortcuts that really aren't serving you or me?
Which we do. I mean, we all take shortcuts. I mean, that's just part of being a human being. The question is how the shortcuts
do it thoughtfully.
Well, yes, true. But I mean, we like shortcuts. I mean, we like to make things simpler, and we think that's what a shortcut is. You know, a shortcut that isn't simply actually a long cut, but you know, we think we're short.
Yeah. So when we take them, though, if I do it, but actually call the audible, so you know what I'm doing and why, then you're not blindsided.
Yes.
And also, you're not then sitting there at the end of the day doing like I said at the beginning, that, oh my goodness, you won't believe what Morag did today, because now you understand the context, and that's the gap that we forget. We think others can read our minds, that they assume that we know we're trying to do the best we can. And we're all trying to do the best we can. It's just sometimes we don't quite nail the landing, and our impact can cause others to feel a little bit of frustration.
Yeah, it's reminding me of the old cliche about the word assume. You break it up into pieces and it's making an ass out of you. Yeah. Yeah, assuming is really good at that. Because you're right, you got to have that level of connection. If you aren't connecting that way, a shortcut is guaranteed to be a long cut, and it's guaranteed to be painful and to leave blood on the trail.
Yes. Wow, these are powerful metaphors.
Yeah, well, I can be graphic. Excuse me if I went too far. But. So, okay, that's given us a pretty good lay of the land here. Tell us a little bit about what it's like working with your most typical, median type client that you work with. Where do you find yourself spending most of your time and energy working with somebody like that?
So the leaders and the teams I'm working with are all wrestling with essentially a version of the same question. how do I get others to care about X as much as I do? Or as much as I need them to. So that might be this customer, this project, this merger, this year's goals. How do I get people to care about this as much as I do, so that we don't all experience what Jody Lynn was doing, which is working till 8 o'clock at night and having to do it all ourselves. And invariably it comes down to, are we clear on what that definition of success is? Do we understand our individual roles and responsibilities, and where do the handoffs and the grey areas occur? And then how are we going to fill those gaps? And then that whole, are we running at the same speed? Because I see so many leaders who are smart and competent, but they're already off and down the track, and they haven't even stopped to see, are they running on their own, or is the team with them? Are the team running in the different direction? And that's what we're helping to solve, is how do we get better together so that we can share in the success and have a little bit of fun along the way? A little daily dose of happy. How about that?
So how do you do that? What is the key? How do you get them to care?
So how do you get them to care? Well, there is the $1 million question, but it don't cost $1 million. Just call me. But so there's a couple of tools that I have available. And the first I'll invite all of your listeners is the Ally Mindset Profile. And that goes with my second book, which I wrote with my best friends at work, Eric and Ruby. It's called You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. And in the Ally Mindset Profile, you discover the 5 practices that make you a go-to colleague, a go-to boss versus a go-from colleague. You know, one where people look forward to your call or you being in the meeting versus thank goodness she's gone. And so,
podcast, by the way,
been there. So you can take the Ally Mindset Profile by going to SkyeTeam, SKYE, team.cloud/You, Me, We. So the 5 practices, let me just give you the quick high level. Firstly is abundance and generosity. Do you think about success as a scarce resource, i.e. hoard it, the knowledge, information is power, or are you the abundance mindset, in which case there's more than enough to go around, and generous with your own expertise, your coaching, your mentoring? Am I looking about how I can help you to be more successful? But with guardrails again, because I've learned to my cost. This is the one I do naturally. If I keep saying yes to everybody else, then my health, my needs get deprioritized. And again, stress, burnout are the result. So it's not that you become just a yes person. It's the, how do we, now I understand what you need. Here's what I need. Now, where's that common ground? From there, we can go to connection and compassion, which is getting to know the human. We've already talked about that. From there, you then get, once we've got that trust that you talked about, Walt, once we've got that foundational relationship, we get courage and vulnerability. For example, I might ask for help, offer help, take help, give and receive feedback, which leads to candor and debate. So are we talking about the right things, not just what's working well, but also what might get in the way of success? And then the 5th capstone is action and accountability, because all of this, as we shared right at the beginning of the conversation, it's common sense. It's not rocket science, but it requires an uncommon discipline to actually show up as our authentic selves or closer to it, show up as the colleague who has your back, show up looking for mutual success versus the win-lose, the dog-eat-dog, the me first, that may undermine us.
And when you're making reference to that authentic self, I mean, as soon as you say that, I'm flashing right back to what we were talking about a moment ago when we talked about connecting within before you try to connect without. Because you can't be authentic unless you know who the frig you are.
Exactly. So we have a 3-step framework, and the first one is look up. And look up is taking a moment from the hamster wheel to think about what's working and what's not, and what's our part in it. How am I feeling in this job, in this team, on this project? Am I having fun and a daily dose of happy, or am I having the daily dose of unhappy? Am I stressed, burnt out? Because then the Ally Mindset Profile might help you understand which of those practices you're not getting enough of, or maybe overplaying that is causing you to not be at your best. So if that's look up, show up is then how do others feel in my presence? Do they leave energized or drained after a conversation with me? Do they leave with clarity or confusion as to what we need to do? Because now that's starting to give me clues. How do I get to the best of both, who I am and what others need, which is step up. What do I need to do? Do I need to be the talkative, chatty Morag in this podcast, or the silent, reflective Morag, which would leave awkward dead air and therefore not necessarily appropriate? But as leaders, we need to turn up and turn down the dial based on our answers to look up, show up, so that we can step up and be the best we can.
Okay. All right.
I
Did
like
that
that.
answer your question, Jody Lynn? I mean, you asked.
Totally. Yeah, and I can see a lot of things that my team and I were trying to work on that, like there was holes, like we were, looking up, not so much showing up or stepping up,
Yeah.
So we worked really hard on changing that a couple of years ago, of looking at like, how do people feel inside of this office? We opened up our own office, and that was something that was really important to us. When clients came in and agents came in, we wanted it to feel like a family, and we successfully built that. There was still something missing though, because we couldn't get people to run with us, perform, do step up in their own ways. But I think really what was missing was the question of, what do they need? And how do we do that?
Yeah, it's the heart, isn't it? Because again, we're told, or I was told early in my career, it's not personal, it's just business. Leave your
It is
emotions
personal. It's all personal.
There you go. See, you and I like this.
Yep.
That's important, because that is a very common catchphrase. It's nothing personal, it's just business. And there's an implicit lie built into that.
Oh, yeah. Sure. And it's funny because people will say, well, I can't possibly be friends with my team or colleagues, because what happens if I have to give them tough feedback? What happens if I have to fire them or lay them off? Well, here's the thing. If you've got a relationship that's built on respect and trust, those tough conversations and those tough decisions don't necessarily go away, but the way you handle them, maybe with a little bit more compassion and humanity, that once I've exited the building, I'm not then BMW, oh yeah, that Walt, I'll never work with him again. You won't believe what he did. It's the, you know what? Yeah, it sucked and I had to go. But I've heard so many stories of leaders who've been able to do it in a way where later on the employee is saying, you know what? That ended up being the best decision ever, because look what happened afterwards. So having a relationship with your team, making it a more compassionate relationship versus dispassionate, allows us to communicate in a way that actually strengthens us all, versus the clinical, disconnected, robotic way that less experienced leaders might try and adopt.
Let me bring another piece into this conversation, because you're really making me think of it right now. This is a characteristic, a negative characteristic I'm about to describe, that is predominantly male, although you do also find female examples of it. Generically speaking, I'll call it the alpha male mindset. And the alpha male mindset is basically, I'm in charge. This is all about me. This is about what I want. You're going to follow my lead. If you don't, it's my way or the highway. That kind of thing. It's not exactly the compassionate approach you're talking about.
Hey, I recognize myself in that. I think I adopted it with my boys when they were younger. I'm the mother. You'll do it, but yeah.
All right.
Now the challenge as a woman is that gets then mislabeled as aggressive as opposed to assertive,
or the B word, or the C word.
Yeah. ABC.
Yeah.
I only thought of that one just now, so thank you, Jody, for that inspiration. So anyway, Walt, you were talking about your vision, the guy who is like, it's my way or the highway. Yes. So the question,
and I was raising the question, how does this affect the dynamic of what you were talking about?
So here's what I've seen is that and my friend and mentor Marshall Goldsmith talks about this in his work, and his book is or the book I'm thinking of right now of his 60 odd books is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And so there is a correlation with success that we're all can fall into, which is I am successful because of insert lucky socks, because I call, a spade and I don't take no nonsense and I can tell people what to do. But at some point, you're also successful despite the fact that you're a bit of a jerk. And here's the thing, on your best days, you're a brilliant jerk, and on your worst days, you're just a jerk. So at some point, these things bite you in the butt. They become career limiting, because I'm not going to volunteer to be on your team because you're taking all the credit, or I don't want to stay in this organization because it's me versus us. And so you lose your talent. So often it's about feedback. It's about accountability and recognizing that just because you're the loudest voice in the room and that's what has got you here, maybe that's not the appropriate style or what's going to get you to whatever it is you aspire to next.
Yeah, you're starting to touch on something that I find to be really a major topic today in a number of different fields. The topic of, is it more important for us to be able to work well together, or is it more important for you to be loyal to me?
A lot of
That
people
loyal to me thing, that can really backfire in the long run, but in the short run, that's really appealing to that alpha male mentality.
Oh, it is. And there will be case studies written in the future that I'm not going to discuss right now about that style. But again, each of us, we are not victims. We need to choose, you said it at the beginning, your own values, Walt. What are you willing to compromise? And where are you going to draw this line in that says, you know what, this is not a place where I can thrive. This is not a behavior that I can tolerate. This is not a decision that I can live with. In which case, what are you going to do in a managed and controlled way in terms of finding a team, finding an organization, finding a role where you can bring all of your talents to bear?
Which basically means you're saying, I got to be willing to consider, am I in the right place?
Yes.
That's not an easy consideration to make.
No.
Well, no, but I mean, think about my own career. I thought I was going to be in the right place when I was in applied mathematics, physics, and economics to be an engineer, but then decided, that isn't what I want to do. I want to go into finance. And I spent 15 successful years in finance, moving into different roles and learning and growing into that version of me, which was then the baseline for the next one, which was both then a mother and the principal breadwinner for the family, but now moving into leadership and executive development, working for an American company and traveling around the world. And even that journey was one that then got me to being a celebrated and best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and an entrepreneur with Sky Team. So I think it was Reed Hastings who wrote a book, and he talked about the idea of each role and job. Think of it as a tour of duty. And whether that tour of duty is 6 months, 6 years, a whole lifetime, what is it that you need in order to thrive and be your best and bring your best? And when it doesn't fit, maybe there's a door open that allows you to pivot and transition into a new chapter. So I think of myself, I'm on my 5th career, and there is still more to come.
And you're not afraid of looking at the possibilities outside of where you're currently at.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I mean, that's a big piece of it, because that's where the stop is going to happen more often than not. Somebody who is struggling with this, they're going to stop with, well, I don't know if I can make that change. I mean, I'm very comfortable where I am right now. This is all, my bills are paid. I got all the success going on and so forth. Yeah, I'm not real happy right now, but
it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. How bad could it be? Right?
I could probably do it. Keep going.
But for most of us, it's the fear of the unknown. I mean, it was like when my family and I decided to move to the States, and it was shortly after my mum had passed away, and we'd just moved in the UK to move back to be close to family. And within 2 years, we had the invitation to move to America. So no, we weren't going to be close to family. And we had to decide, well, we said that this was a value, family first, But this is an adventure that our boys will going to benefit from. They were 7 and 4 at the time, but there are downsides. And we came to the conclusion that to not do it would be a disservice. And that, yes, the worst that could happen would be that 2 years, our visas would expire, we'd move back to the UK, have to move back in with my dad, and maybe take a back step on the size of the house we could afford or where we were in our careers, but we would be steps forward because of that global experience. Now, hindsight has shown this was the right move 20 years later, and we have flourished. But when we're here and all we can see are the obstacles, sometimes we just need the courage to say, well, what's the worst? I can take this step, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just take the step back to where I am and continue down a different path. And that's where, as an executive coach, I'm helping leaders navigate these dilemmas, these decision points, and then walk that new path more confidently, thoughtfully, and deliberately, that gives you a greater chance of a successful outcome at the end.
Yeah. And that for me is why it's so important to have that internal relationship. Because it's the crucible, if you will, in which you're able to burn the fire that makes it possible to have that kind of a breakthrough in your thought process. If you don't have that internal relationship, you're going to get trapped. Jody Lynn and I, we've talked about that a lot here on the show, right? And you know, how many different scenarios have we come up with, Jody Lynn? I mean, 5,000? I don't know.
Yeah, a million? I don't know. A lot.
A lot, right? Where you just get yourself trapped because you're not willing to have that mental breakthrough in that way. But what you're talking about, Morag, that breakthrough based on, you know, here's how I'm really looking at it from where I am, from who I am, from how I feel about myself, how my partner feels about himself, and so on and so forth. That kind of approach is always going to be, no matter what decision you make, it's always going to produce a better result. You know, you could have like 4 or 5 different outcomes depending on which route you decide to take, but the result's always going to be the best result, because you start from that viewpoint. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
I think I'm rendered her mute. I thought that was going to lead to a comment. Or didn't you?
It was a mic drop moment. We were just all like, yes, with you.
Okay. Well, then I guess that leads to the next obvious thing, which is we should tell people, you know, who might be interested in working with you, how to reach you.
Oh, well, I'm going to like, oh, please. So how can they reach me? Well, don't forget the Ally Mindset profile, Sky Team, SKYE team.cloud/YouMeWe. Help continue our ongoing research. You can buy both of my books, You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One, and the second edition of Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships. Both are available in audio, Kindle, and from your favorite retailer. Connect with me on LinkedIn. The advantage of Morag Barrett, you'll find me. I'm the one that writes. I'm the one that responds. Please connect with me. And then follow us at skyteam.com, SKYE team.com, and you can learn more about our work and impact. And of course, invite me to be a speaker, invite me to be your executive coach, invite me to help design a leadership program for you and your team. I'd love to help you to have the best career ever.
So you don't just talk connection, you want to connect.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Oh, I am a habitual connector. I just love it. The chance encounters, forget 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or separation or whatever. It's 2 degrees of connection. I trust you. Trust me. So connect with me.
All right. That sounds great. I love it. Well, we have a few things we like to do at the end of every show. We just did the first one. How do we reach the person who is our guest on the program after she has shared all these wonderful insights with our audience? Second thing I like to do is I like to turn to my co-host, Jody Lynn, who always has amazing viewpoints to bring to the whole conversation, as you've already heard, and ask her, Jody Lynn, I know what you're thinking about. Jody Lynn's a copious note taker. I don't know if you noticed that, Morag, but she takes like massive amounts of notes. I'm really curious to know which of the notes she's going to look at today. She took a lot. I mean, I was watching her, you know, and she always takes a lot, but today she took a lot of notes. So which one are you pointing at today?
Well, I rarely flip the page and have more than one page, and I have 3.
You have 3. Okay, yeah.
3 pages. There was a lot of things that I wrote down. I think what this conversation did for me was a huge reminder, and I hope for our audience too. I think that in our society, the way that our world works, as we grow up and we go through school and then we go to college and then we go to a job, we're not really taught to have these connections with people. And we're almost taught that these environments aren't conducive to being happy. Like, you go to work and you're going to hate it. That's the next 40 years of your life or more. Good luck to you. And that's not the way that it has to be. And so I love that you're talking about this. And I love that you brought forward those, 4 pieces of connection. Can I count on you? Can I depend on you? Do you care? Do I care about you? Do you care about me? Do we trust each other? Do I trust you? I think these things are so incredibly important inside of business. And I see the impact of being a leader myself now, not perfect, but in progress, of connecting on this deeper level where people know they can depend on you, they trust you, they like you, and they know that you care about them. And in these environments, we all flourish and we all go together. So thank you so much for that beautiful reminder, because I think that if we can have more of this in all areas of our life, we really will change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the way you tied all that together. And then the final thing I like to do with every one of these shows is I've been doing the podcast for 12 and a half years now. And we've been doing regular interviews for about the last 5-6 years, something like that. Up before that, it was all just co-host conversations. And as I've interviewed more and more people, first of all, I've come to realize just how wonderful it is to have so many different perspectives. In fact, I love it when I encounter somebody who has pretty much the same perspective of me. That's how I end up with co-hosts like Jody Lynn, because we have a very similar perspective. But I love at the same time when I run into somebody who has a completely different perspective, because I learn the most from them. And then there's all the in-betweens, and I have different levels of stuff to be learned and all that. So I love that. And I love the fact that there was a lot here for me to learn as well, as so often happens in these conversations. I also have noticed that since we entered the 21st century, the internet era, we have created a big gap that most of us are kind of blind to, and I like to try to fill that gap. The gap comes from the fact that we now are self-promoters. We do social media connections. We create the LinkedIn accounts. We create the Facebook, the TikTok, all that kind of stuff, and we're connecting with other people in some ways that are superficial, others less superficial, a little bit more deep. But we're still doing these kinds of online connections, and we're doing, we're writing books. You got 2 books that you've written and 1 second edition. We're putting out courses. We're sharing content. We're writing blog pieces. We're writing posts on social media and so forth, sharing all about these ideas that we've learned along the way, and we're not getting credit for them. And I say to myself, well, I can do something about that. I'm a podcast host. So Morag, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who've been taking in your content, hearing what you've had to say on podcasts and on blog posts and so forth, benefiting from them in ways you didn't even know about. On their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate the fact that you took the time to share it with us today. So best of luck with what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Good stuff. And thank you, Jody Lynn, as usual.
Of course.
By the way, 3 pages today. I mean, I'm not sure what the record is, but it's like the top 10.
It is. It actually is a record. I've never written 3 pages.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
all right.
Back at you.
So thank you much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.